Simple Simon exposes worsening disaster. Martin North, John Adams, in the interest of evil. John, we're back again.
We are back again, Martin. How are you?
I'm pretty good. How are you going?
Good. Now, some of our audience will say, well, Adams and North have been off the air for about a week and a half.
What's going on?
What has gone on? So there is a reason in terms of our absence. So in the last show, we talked about ASIC's response to the Adams report that we published on the 6th of October. And ASIC was before the House of Representatives Standing Committee on Economics on the 11th of October. Now, here is the new revelation that we can reveal in this ongoing saga about financial crime and ASIC, is that on the 14th of October, so 2 Fridays ago, ASIC released their latest annual report, which is for financial year 21-22, which looks at the period of July of last year to June of this year. Now, the reason why this is important, Martin, is that in my primary report that I published on the 6th of October, we looked at the period of July 2011 to June 2021, because that was the latest data. So now we have actually 12 months of additional data to be able to see what has actually happened at ASIC in terms of the handling of these complaints and reports of alleged misconduct. And so what we found in the new data is that ASIC's performance actually went down even further in the last 12 months compared to the previous 10 years. So what I'm effectively saying, Martin, is that this is the worst operational performance, in my view, of ASIC in the last 11 years that I have examined. Now, because we are pushing for a parliamentary inquiry into ASIC's performance in this whole area, in the last week, what I've been able to put together very quickly is a new report, a 26-page independent supplementary report, where we're not covering the old ground. We're actually we're saying that this needs to be read in conjunction with the main independent report. But what we're actually saying is we're providing new analysis, and we're giving parliamentarians basically a refresher in terms of this new data. Now, it just so happened that I think at 4 o'clock in the morning on Monday morning, so Sunday night, Monday morning, I was able to conclude the report and be able to wrap everything up. So we are recording here on Tuesday. So what I can say, Martin, is that yesterday I sent my new report and a whole host of official letters to 30 parliamentarians who I basically wrote about the first report. We've now sent them the supplementary report and said, well, here's a letter, here's the new report, everything is worse, we still want the inquiry. And so what we're going to do in this show is update our audience about what does the new data say, and obviously address some of the simplistic analysis that ASIC spoke about on the 11th of October, and then obviously demonstrate that some of their excuses to Parliament were furphies, and we can actually debunk them.
And as I recall, as I read the updated ASIC report, they really didn't recognise a deterioration in their performance, did they?
No. Well, yes, so they did in their annual report, and obviously the Chairman Longo on the 11th of October told the House of Representatives that ASIC is actually engaged in a high level of enforcement activity, and things are fantastic, and things like while they have limitations, they are doing a good and effective job, and so the numbers we're about to go through, I think, tell a completely different story.
Absolutely. Well, let's go through it, John.
Excellent. So if our audience can cast their mind back, we had a methodology, Martin, where we talked about 3 types of sources of reports of alleged misconduct. So first one is what we call reports from the public. The second one is what we call breach reports, which has been renamed reportable situations. And the third one is what we call the supplementary liquidator report. So now, if we can go to slide 1, Martin, what we're going to see is that the first revelation is that the rate of no further action of reports of alleged misconduct from the public reached an all-time high in financial year 21-22 to 66%. Now, last financial year, in terms of 2021, it was 65%, and that was a record high that we discussed a few shows ago. But now it's actually gone up 1% higher to 66%. So that is an all-time high. If we go on to slide 2, Martin, so reports from the public that were referred for action. Now, action may mean investigation. It may mean other types of action, for example, surveillance. Well, that actually fell to an all-time low at 13%, and that's 2% lower than 2021. So here we have a situation, Martin, where people from the public are going to ASIC and saying, I have an issue, I'm reporting alleged misconduct, a breach of the law. And what we see in the last financial year is that fewer reports are actually being referred for some type of action, and more reports are being knocked back in terms of no further action. And that obviously is a worsening trend, which we were obviously talking about in previous shows about the last 10 years.
Yeah, well, it's a continuing trend in the wrong direction, isn't it?
Indeed. Now, Martin, if we go on to slide 3 and we look at the source 2, which is what they call these reportable situations or breach reports, and just to remind our audience, breach reports come from license holders of Australian Financial Services license or credit licensees. That's the new category that's been added in the last 12 months, or from auditors. These are what they call these breach reports or reportable situations. So what we have seen in the latest round of numbers is that the rate of no further action of these reports that come from professionals, people in the industry, auditors and license holders, the rejection rate was 90%. Now, in 2021, it was 89%, and we thought that was just outrageously high. Well, they've actually even upped it higher to 90%. So you have all these people in the industry who, by law, are required to tell ASIC if the law has been broken, and they are reporting in significant numbers that there are all these breaches. And yet now we are seeing that whereas 11 years ago, the rejection rate or the no further action rate was 50%, now it is literally 90% 11 years later. And you have to think, for those people in the industry preparing these reports and then submitting them to ASIC, what's the point of telling ASIC that the law has been broken if the chances of them doing something about this is only a 1 in 10 chance?
Well, it just asks the question because, of course, the point is they already think there's something wrong, right?
Exactly.
That's why they reported it. So it's not suspicion. It's actually a bit stronger than suspicion, isn't it?
Yes. So basically, people, license holders in particular, if there is an actual breach, they are required to submit their in terms of their breach to ASIC. Now, auditors, it's slightly different. Auditors, it's either a breach or a suspected breach. But obviously, auditors obviously are well-trained professionals who have obviously significant qualifications. So unlike the members of the public, auditors have a very good sense of judgment as to whether something has happened incorrectly or illegally, or if something has happened by the book. And so you would think that these people know what they're talking about when they're going to ASIC, and yet the rejection rate is in terms of 90%, which is completely very alarming in terms of my view. And again, so there could be a reasonable explanation around this, but this is obviously why I think a parliamentary inquiry is required, just so we can actually understand what's driving these trends. And again, because ASIC won't explain, and they can't explain the trend, because they always talk about, their public explanation is a point-in-time excuse, as opposed to, well, why is this happening at ASIC over the last 11 years? Now, if we move on to source 3, which are these liquidator reports, what we found in financial year 21-22 was that 87.3% of initial liquidator reports alleged misconduct. So obviously they received over 3,000 initial liquidator reports. 87% of liquidators, again, very highly credentialed people who have professional qualifications and professional licenses to be liquidators, and they are registered by ASIC. 87% says in these liquidations they found a breach of the law, and of those, only 1.8% were referred for action. And again, action doesn't mean investigation. It actually means ASIC's going to do something about it. So you have all these liquidators doing these liquidations, sending these reports required by law to ASIC, and they're saying that almost 90% there's a breach of the law. And of those, ASIC will only take action in only less than 2%. Now, in 2021, they referred 2.4% of initial liquidator reports for action, and now that is even further down. So their aptitude to take these liquidator reports and say we need to do something with these because these liquidators saying the law has been broken, I mean, that has actually gone further down in the last financial year compared to previous financial years. And again, that says to me that there is a lower propensity or a lower appetite to be aggressive in trying to ensure that people follow the law in this country.
Yeah, well, the more you go through the litany, John, the worse it gets, frankly.
What I should say, Martin, is that while this sounds alarming, that we do have a few more alarming things to be able to highlight. So if we go on to slide 4, Martin, so what we found in the last financial year was that the rejection rate for whistleblower disclosures was 91%. So they had 774 whistleblower disclosures, which was slightly down from 2021. But the rejection rate or the no further action rate is still the same rate as the average from July 2015 to June 2022. So again, if you're a corporate whistleblower in this country and you think that it's the appropriate thing to do to go to the government and actually blow the whistle, well, the chances of something happening is only 90%. So it's either ASIC's not interested in whistleblowers, or potentially there's too many whistleblowers who don't know how to blow the whistle properly, or they're blowing the whistle in terms of the wrong thing. So, but again, when I look at these numbers don't give me confidence that, and to be honest, Martin, I've never been placed in that situation where I've needed to blow the whistle per se. But obviously, if I am ever placed in that situation, I would not have confidence that I could go to ASIC confidently and actually put my neck on the line, and ASIC was going to do something with these types of high rates of no further action.
And it seems to me, John, that whistleblowing, is actually an important element within the system, isn't it? People should feel that if they spot something that's concerning, there should be an escalation mechanism that they can actually go with, and the whistleblower mechanism should be that mechanism. But if you get such a small response rate, why would you bother?
Precisely. So Martin, particularly when it comes to financial crime, I mean, one of the things that I learned in my independent investigation over the last 18 months is a lot of big frauds, a lot of corporate misconduct. Usually the auditors are a part of the process. And so if people tend to think that they're going to pick up something in the financial reports or the financial accounts, well, HIH and Trio Capital and a few other ones, the auditors were basically able to fudge actually assist the company per se and actually fudging the numbers. So, and obviously in some of these big scandals, and obviously even in terms of Madoff's auditor was a 3-man outfit out of Florida, and the auditors were critical to perpetuating the fraud by giving people confidence that the financial accounts were all stacking up. And so in those situations where you have the company and the auditors basically rigging the numbers to perpetuate a fraud, the only way you get to know what's really going on is through internal whistleblowers, and that's why whistleblowing is an important part of the law enforcement system. And obviously you need to provide the legal framework, but also the confidence that if you're going to actually blow the whistle, something substantial is going to happen if you do it in the proper manner.
Yeah, well, it's going to be necessary for the process to work. So if the process means that you're unlikely to get any reaction, you're going to keep your head down and just ignore it, aren't you?
Indeed. Now, I mean, the other alarming thing, Martin, is if we go on to slide 5, is that in 21-22, ASIC only commenced 107 new investigations. So this is the lowest number of new investigations in the last 11 years. So if our audience could cast their mind back in financial year 14-15, they commenced 229 new investigations, and only in the last financial year they only did 107. And so the question is, with more resources and more staff compared to 2015, why has the number of new investigations why has it gone down? So there cannot be any suggestion to my mind that there is lower financial crime or lower or fewer breaches of law, actual breaches of law compared to the financial year 2014, 2015. So again, whereas you would think that ASIC would getting the message that they need to actually lift their game and do more investigations, because again, you can't enforce the law if you're not willing to investigate. And we see over 7 years a declining trend in their aptitude to investigate, and that is a deep concern that Parliament should in particular focus on, because again, as we've said previously, Parliament passes the law, Parliament provides the resources and expects ASIC to enforce the law. But if there are fewer and fewer investigations, how can anyone have any particular confidence that the will of Parliament, the will of the people, is actually being adhered to?
Well, it does beg the question, isn't it? What are they doing, and who are looking after the interests of those that people would assume are being looked after?
Indeed. Now, Martin, if we go on to slide 6 now, one positive, there is a couple of slight positive things that we can point to is that, so when we look at the ratio of investigations to total reports of alleged misconduct, in last financial year, the numbers actually improved. So in 2021, the number was 0.74%, and we've repeatedly talked about that number. Well, last financial year, it was 0.86. So slightly better, but it's still less than 1%. Now, the reason why the ratio has gone up, so we've just said that the number of investigations has gone down. So why has the ratio gone up? Is because there were fewer total reports of alleged misconduct last financial year. So if we go to slide 7, Martin, what we're going to see that in last financial year, there was a dramatic fall in the number of total reports of alleged misconduct, and that's why there's a slight increase in the ratio. So again, But the main point is that for the last 3 financial years, the chances of a report of alleged misconduct going through to an official investigation by ASIC, it is still less than 1%, and that is the headline that the ABC and News.com ran back on the 6th of October, and that number, that key message, still holds intact in the financial year 21-22.
Yeah, and I guess, John, the question I've got is that back in October when the ASIC's team were in front of the Parliament, they didn't really want to sort of acknowledge any issues at all, did they?
No. I mean, correct. They didn't want to acknowledge any issues, but although I should say, even though that Tanya Lawrence, in terms of Tanya Lawrence, who's the member for Hasluck, she did raise my report. They really didn't press ASIC in terms of these statistics and actually understand, well, why is your agency performing in terms of these trends? So now, obviously, tonight we're going to see the budget being handed down, and so this week is Budget Week in Canberra, and that's going to be consuming the time and the minds of politicians. But as we go into next week, we'll have Senate estimates, and then on the 25th of November, the Joint Committee on Corporations and Financial Services will be having a one-day hearing in terms of ASIC. So there's a couple of opportunities for senators, as opposed to the House, to press ASIC in terms of some of these issues going forward. But one of the things that I've made clear in my supplementary report, and I've written a number of letters to politicians, is that to say that these normal oversight hearings where you may only have 5 or 10 minutes to ask a few simple questions, you're not really going to get down into the weeds of this very complex and nuanced issue. And that's why I think a standalone inquiry, that should be paramount in the minds of our elected officials.
Yeah, and just let me underscore again, John. This is data direct from the ASIC report, so it's their data.
100%.
Right? So there's been no jiggery-pokery or recalculation or anything. All you're doing is interpreting the information that they themselves have shared.
100%. Now, the thing is that there was one piece of feedback. So I was in Parliament last Wednesday talking to various people, and there was one piece of feedback that I received, and it draws on something that Warren Day, the Chief Operating Officer at ASIC, said back on the 11th of October to the House. So there was this reference to ASIC receives all these reports of alleged misconduct. A number of these reports have nothing to do with ASIC or they're not within ASIC's jurisdiction, and they refer them on. And so the question was put to me by someone in Parliament. So when we worked out this calculation in terms of less than 1%, did we include those out of jurisdiction reports, or what the annual report calls no jurisdiction? Did we include those reports in the calculation? And the answer is I did. Now, the suggestion was that by including those reports in this total calculation, we were distorting the number by actually inflating the denominator. Now, 2 points on that. The first point is that the reason why I included these so-called non-jurisdictional reports or out-of-jurisdictional reports is, in some cases, because ASIC has such a broad remit, because they regulate all corporations, so in theory, there's a whole host of issues that ASIC could investigate, and they don't necessarily need to refer to the ACCC or in terms of AFCA, in terms of the federal police, state police, etc. So ASIC, in a lot of cases, can take on the issue if they had the appetite to do so. But some of the feedback that I received during my research was that where they have the opportunity to bump off the issue to someone else because of a jurisdictional issue, they will tend to do it. And so because there is no public data about which legitimate reports that they should have referred to an agency versus those that they did, but they could have kept them, I thought, well, why don't we just keep those numbers in there and obviously just calculate the number. Now, in order to satisfy this particular individual who made this criticism, we actually did a comparative analysis looking at the ratio of investigations to total reports of alleged misconduct, including these out of non-jurisdictional reports and then actually excluding them. If we actually put slide 8 on the screen, Martin, what we're going to see is that the top line is where we've actually taken out these non-jurisdictional reports, and the lower line is where we have actually included them, and the lower line is actually the original line that we've published in our original report from the 6th of October. And so what you're going to see, and so I spent about 2 pages in the supplementary report addressing this issue. When you actually take out these non-jurisdictional reports, you basically see hardly any change in the actual overall rate of investigation to total report of alleged misconduct. So anyone who suggests that by taking these particular reports out, that ASIC says they refer a lot away, that's going to dramatically change the view of ASIC's performance. The reality is that it doesn't. While Warren Day said there's a lot, there is actually a very small amount. A few hundred complaints out of more than 14,000 complaints in total. And so again, so what I've attempted to do in the supplementary report is to address this particular furphy, because this is what these bureaucrats do, particularly ASIC. They have these pre-scripted lines in front of Parliament. They have a whole host of excuses, but once you start to dig into the data and you actually crunch their numbers, not my numbers, you realize that some of these excuses don't hold water. And so I think we've been able to debunk this whole notion that these reports that they refer to other agencies it's going to change the story. I mean, to my view, it doesn't actually move the needle. And only this morning, Martin, did I text this particular individual in Parliament and said, well, you now have our supplementary report. If you look at Section 8, you'll actually see that we've addressed the criticism that you made last week, and that criticism basically shows that the excuses that ASIC provided on the 11th of October don't hold water, and that there is still a substantial issue that needs to be addressed by policymakers. And hopefully any concerns about our calculations or methodology that were raised last week have been addressed, and the analysis is solid, and it is what it is.
Very interesting, John. One question. There are presumably quite a few issues relating to crypto being raised up at the moment, right? Because crypto is a big area of potential scamming. And of course, ASIC has no responsibility at all for anything to do with crypto regulation, right? So where would those flow? Would they actually come into ASIC at all? So if somebody makes a complaint to ASIC about crypto, how would they deal with that?
Yes. So now, if there is an issue related to crypto, well, I mean, in a lot of cases, it's not going to be referred to another agency because no other agency has jurisdiction in terms of crypto. But I have to say, I am aware that ASIC has actually invested some crypto situations or reports of alleged misconduct, and so the reality then becomes is, what is the allegation? So for example, if the allegation is fraud or a misappropriation of capital, well, even though it's a crypto asset, fraud is captured by other laws. So you potentially could investigate a fraud on the crypto market using other Commonwealth or state laws, and you can say, well, we're not investigating crypto, we're investigating fraud, and fraud is fraud, no matter what the asset class is. So in terms of which cases to date have they knocked back in crypto, and which cases have they taken on, very hard to know. But I have had some solid mail that they have actually done at least one investigation into a crypto situation, and we'll obviously see if ASIC makes any public announcements about civil or criminal charges in the crypto space.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, it seems to me that that's a gap in their report. I mean, I would have thought they would have been more focusing on that because it's clearly a growth area at the moment.
Yes. Well, I mean, the one commentary they have made about crypto, Martin, is that they have highlighted the point that policymakers are looking at regulating crypto, and that there's obviously been some parliamentary inquiries into the crypto space. So I think ASIC is providing their point of view in that policy debate, and obviously if Parliament was to legislate crypto, well then that would then become a responsibility that ASIC would have to investigate, and then that would obviously...
Or just increase the number of inputs and probably not the number of investigations.
Well, look, according to the current numbers, I mean, that would be the reasonable conclusion, but we would have to see what happens from there. So now, moving forward, Martin, is that over the last couple of weeks, as we announced our major first report, I had a whole host of people email me saying, please send me the report, I want to read it. And that's the first 71 pages. So if anyone wants to read the original report, the primary report, feel free. We're still happy to provide that. If people want to now come back and read our supplementary report, again, why don't we just put our, in terms of slide 9 on the screen, in terms of my email address. So anyone can email me at john@adamseconomics.com. Happy to provide you with with one or both reports, and obviously in this process it's very important that people become educated about in terms of what ASIC does and how they do it, because even in the last week to week and a half, Martin, I've still received emails from people who have interfaced with ASIC and have come up empty-handed, and so there is still a lot of concerns and issues that people have, and particularly investors. And the other thing I would say, and this is what I think one thing that we said in the last couple of shows, is that as we see interest rates to increase, as we start to see various firms and entities having issues with in terms of servicing in terms of their debts, you are going to see things fall over, and then obviously there'll be more and more concerns about the actions of people in the market, and that should obviously, in theory, lead to more reports of alleged misconduct in terms of ASIC. So if you are in a situation where you do think something's not going right at a particular company or a particular workplace, and you want to, in terms of make a report to ASIC, knowing how to do it effectively is very important, because again, these numbers show that their aptitude to doing something continues to fall, and you don't want to be in a situation where you've got hundreds of thousands of dollars in a particular investment vehicle, and then something goes wrong, and then the ASIC won't enforce the law, and that the bad guys are able to take your money and somehow get away with it.
Yeah, it's a very good point, John. And in this uncertain time, we are likely to see more people being caught out. So we need an adequate regime to make sure that the regulatory environment is working effectively and as it should be working.
Indeed. Now, one last point about the politics, Martin, is that so I am still in contact with the various politicians in Parliament about my desire for a parliamentary inquiry. So again, today's Tuesday, it's budget day. I will be in Parliament House tomorrow, so I'm going down for a series of meetings, and hopefully in those meetings we'll get a sense as to what is the reaction of politicians to both the primary report and the supplementary report, and obviously, for those who haven't yet made their voices heard with Parliament, obviously go back to our previous shows, look at the politicians we've listed, or people can email me for the list of politicians. And if you do have an important story to tell Parliament, it's very important that you do so Parliament's aware that there are more people in across the community who have concerns with ASIC and want reform with ASIC, but obviously, hopefully, if we get some positive signals or perhaps even some new news to reveal, we can come back and tell our audience what is the position of Parliament vis-a-vis ASIC and what can we do productively to actually achieve reform and actually deliver better outcomes for the community.
Well, as you say, John, very important. And if people do have stories to tell, we're very open to hear them. We're getting quite a few already, so that's quite important, isn't it? Well, keep batting in the interest of the people, John.
Thank you very much.
Martin North, John Adams, in the interest of the people. We'll see you next time.